You're going now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hello, Internet. We are revisiting the Spider-Man Venom scarf because I realized that some of my previous instructions were not uh, as detailed and communicative as they ought to be. I've shared the pattern with several people, and they've contacted me with a little more specific questions or frustrations and stuff like that. So, in my first video, I linked everybody to a cast on by fallingblox, and his cast on is super awesome, and he does amazing double knitting stuff. We'll have to link to him so you can check him out because he's like cooler than me. But I'll actually walk through his cast on and then show, because he does a cast on for just 2 colors, and then I'll show how I add the third color into that. So, let's say we're just doing a scarf that's solid black on one side, solid red on the other side. The way fallingblox does his cast on is that you cast on each stitch for each side separately. Some people will, here, I'll show you. Some people, they make the knot, and oh my gosh, I've already forgotten how to cast on regular. But some people will just cast on, 2 strands, 2 strands, 2 strands, and they keep them looped together. Fallingblox actually does each color separately. So his basic idea is you split those 2 colors with your thumb and your index finger, make your little Y, and then you go back and forth with your colors. So if you go through this loop, I'll try again. If you go through this loop, you're casting on a black stitch. If you go through this loop, you're casting on a red stitch. And you would just go back and forth and back and forth. And you've got both of your colors. And then as you continued to knit above that, the black stitches would always be on this side of the piece and the red would always be on that side of the piece. So to add the third color, let's see here, bring it up here. Because you're casting on each individual color, the other 2 that you're not putting on, you just hold together. So here's our slip knot, that on the needle, and this slip knot isn't part of the actual piece, so you don't have to count those as part of your loops that you're actually going to stitch into. So let's look at the actual scarf for reference. You've got your webbing, your field, another line of webbing, and then your field. And on the back side, of course, it's white on a black field for Venom. So your first pair of stitches, you're going to have a black stitch and then a white stitch, okay, because that's those 2 together. Your next pair, you're going to have red, black for 5, I can't count, because you've got your 5 stitches there. And then you would switch again to black on the front, white on the back. So if we actually do this, we'll do a black stitch first. So you get your black by itself and just hold those 2 together as if they were one. Get your black by itself, same Y, go into there, and cast on a black stitch. Okay. Your next one's going to be white for the back side, so get white by itself, hold the other 2 together, okay, go through and do a white stitch. Okay. These 2, this pair, is equal to your front and your back here. Your black on the front and the white on the back. Now we'll do a red one for the front. So we get red by itself. Here's a loop. Cast on a red. Back side is black, Venom side, right? Get black by itself. Oops. Cast on a black stitch. Excuse me. Do that again. Red, black by itself, black, red by itself, oops. Red, black by itself, black. And yes, your yarns will tangle as you carry on. Much of the time in this project is actually spent untangling. but it's worth it, in my opinion. So how many pairs are we at? Here's our first pair for the webbing. 1, 2, 3. So we got 2 more pairs to go. Red, black, red, black. Okay, so there's that. Now, again, we're going back to the webbing, so black and then white. So black by itself still. We'll do another black. And then we'll do white by itself. There's a white. So all of this right here, this whole section, is the cast on for this much of the scarf. So then you would just repeat that 2 more times until you've got your whole scarf cast on. Flip it around and you start knitting. That's pretty much it. I think the only other thing I could possibly show you is the other gal who actually uses 2 needles to cast on. I said before, it's useful for me because I cast on very tightly, which makes it hard just to start knitting. Once you get going, it's no big deal, but that initial row that you knit is painfully tight. So what you can do is start with your slip knot and actually have 2 needles together. Just treat them as one. Or if you have like really large needles, I have a limited supply of needles, so the doubling up works for me. But if you had like a larger size needle, you could just go with that. But it's the same thing. Put your black by itself, go into there, make a black stitch. Put your white by itself, go there, do a white stitch. Red by itself, red stitch, black by itself, black stitch, and so on and so forth. And that just makes that a little bit looser so that your first row is a little easier to do. I think that's all for the cast on. Cut!